Distributing of Drinks and Disruption. That's our sort of working title for an occasional series of talks, like the one we're about to enjoy, which is really an attempt by the AMBO to kind of talk the walk, as it were, to understand what a practice of community animation and community invigoration might look like. We're trying to, rather than just sit on our bums and snipes on the sidelines, to actually practice what we preach in this place. It's a social enterprise that, with the support of local government, and we acknowledge our local councillor, Greg Rogerson, who's turned up tonight and often does here at the AMBO, with the help of the local government authority to actually demonstrate what the future of the town like Nambour might look like. So I'm delighted to welcome David Engwicht. I go back a ways with him. We have sort of both of us have motley careers, but part of the past has included a connection with a Danish business school called the Chaos Pilots, which 15 years ago sort of pioneered the idea that business could actually operate for social good and still be a business. You know, these days they talk about social enterprise and words like this. David will tell you enough about himself. My experience of him has been an indicator to give some idea of what his motley background was. But I like his work for two reasons. This is the third time this year that I've engaged with this man. The first time was at Woodman, the second time was at a workshop for a not-for-profit, and this is the third. The two things that I admire most about his practice is, first of all, his turn of phrase. He has a way of putting things that I think denotes the fact that he's self-taught, that he's not a self-appointed expert. He is speaking from experience, and the second is just that, his experience, his practical experience with the matters he's talking about. This is not an academic exercise, this is something that, I don't mean to not be academic, but it's in the sense that it's applied work. And I know, having visited him in his transformed house, which is kind of integrated with his neighbourhood, there's no real boundary between David's house and his neighbourhood, that he does practice, he lives what he preaches as well. So please welcome David Engwicht.
First of all, apologies. We tried really hard to get the screen to show the correct aspects, so all the images are going to be a bit squashed up. So just use your imagination and stretch them out a tiny little bit. So this is called disruption. So feel free to disrupt me as I talk and ask questions as we go along. And my job is really to turn everything you've probably thought about town centres on its head. Just like a good old elephant here. Now, my background is in 1987. I was washing windows for a living. The State Highway Department decided to widen the road through our neighbourhood called Route 20. I got involved in the community fight against that road widening. It was a baptism of fire. I started learning about transport systems. I wrote a little book that became an underground bestseller that was part of our campaign. We never intended it to go into the public realm. But it got published in North America and became an international. You got a copy?
I was there.
You were there?
I would speak on some occasions on conference.
Right.
And
yeah. I then wrote a follow-up book which got used as a text in university courses, radically redefined the way that we look at our cities. So, I'll take on a bit of a journey. One of the things that fascinates me is the way that we think about things. What are the mental models that we use? Now, what's really interesting is that up until the Industrial Revolution, there was no real concept of master plan. So when people made an object like this, every object in the language of today, we would say that every object they made was a prototype for the next object that they were going to make. So they would make mistakes, they would learn from it, and then all of those lessons would get built into the next object they made. And while 40 or 50 years later they'd become a master craftsperson, having incorporated all the lessons that they learned along the way. Now, interestingly, from an urban design point of view, this is the way towns and villages got built. So prior to the Industrial Revolution, there was no master planning of towns. People could basically put a building wherever the hell they wanted to put it. But what's really interesting is that they had a civic responsibility to make sure that how they placed their building didn't just make the building work internally, but made the public space work externally. So it was their civic responsibility, and everybody's civic responsibility, that resulted in the kind of urban form you see if you go to Nottingham Hill Town or a French villa. Chaotic, organic, and that's because people basically went, where am I going to put my building? And so the space has evolved in a very organic kind of a way. So these magical spaces emerged out of this civic responsibility that people had. Now, come the Industrial Revolution, we radically changed the way that we think about designing things and making things, because if you're going to mass produce something, you have to master plan it in advance. You have to think about what's the end product that I want. There's no time for 50 years of trying out how you might make the car. You've got to design the bloody thing, put it on the production line and turn it out. Now, interestingly, this is the way that we began to design everything, including our towns. We now see our towns as some kind of a machine that we master plan, and so our council organisations are driven by people who, so this person here, he might be the town engineer. He's given this bit of the machine to look after, and his job is optimise the way the roads work. Don't worry about anything else, just look after that part of the machine and make sure it's working really well. This person here might be the cultural development officer. They might have this bit of the machine over here, and so each of these people are given their bit of the machine to look after. There's this notion that somehow a town or a city works like a machine. This little person hiding back here, it's this lady here. She's just been appointed, what's your title?
Reimagine Nambour.
Reimagine Nambour. So she's got her machine, hers is this little wheel. Now, there's some major problems with master planning in a complex system. Master planning works fine if you're designing a toaster or a hammer or a car, although there's still some limitations with that. But when it comes to dynamic systems, they have a problem. My brother is in software development, and he said when the computer was first invented, the software engineers all adopted what's called the waterfall model, which is the master planning model for how you design your software. So the problem is software works in a dynamic system where people are inventing things that completely and utterly change the way the system works. Now, in town planning terms, what this means is some multi-millionaire arrives in your town with 10 million bucks in his pocket and he wants to do a development which is against the town plan. Have a guess what happens?
Yes, built, yes.
Or let's use the other example. So, you know, I did a presentation recently at a conference where I said, I want you to imagine you're at a conference of taxi owners 10 years ago, and you're all deciding how can we improve the taxi industry. So somebody comes up with an idea, let's paint the taxis a different colour, and people are putting forward ideas as to how to improve their taxis, and there's some guy sitting up the back, some smart ass, who's thinking, Uber. Uber. You with me?
Yeah.
And suddenly the whole system is thrown into disarray. So there are problems when you're dealing with a dynamic system that has these kind of changes happening. I think I'm going to tell you that, yes. The three major problems is, my brother said to me, you wouldn't believe how many pieces of multi-million-dollar software are sitting on company shelves never having seen the light of day, because by the time they're developed, they're out of date. And I said, you wouldn't believe how many reports are sitting on council shelves never having seen the light of day, because by the time they're finished, they're out of date. And I'll expand on that in a moment. The second thing that happens is that small mistakes become entrenched bugs. So in software, if you make an assumption at the start and it puts a bug into the system, the further you go down the track, the more expensive it gets to try and get rid of that bug. Now I can tell you, when I analyse town centres, I cannot tell you how many times I see a very small assumption that's made that buggerises the entire town centre. And it becomes very expensive to try and get rid of it. For example, Mildura decided to renovate their Langtree Mall, and some smart aleck thought, you know, once a year at Christmas time we have a big Christmas concert. Wouldn't it be fantastic if right in the centre of town we had a huge stage and a huge area to run our Christmas concert? And so they built a great big stage, and then they left this huge area vacant. And when I did an analysis of that mall, I said, that assumption has killed this entire space, because they had this huge white elephant that was being used 3 or 4 times a year, dominating their entire town centre. You see, so small assumptions get built in that buggerise the system. Now, the next one will probably surprise you, but and this was research they did in software development, the client knows 20% of what they want out of the software at the start. It's going to be a huge problem for you. Because reimagine Nambour, if I was to say to you, ask you tonight, what would you like to see in your town centre, which is a reimagine Nambour exercise in condensed form, I can tell you what I'm going to get from you. You're going to say, wow, I love fairy lights like I saw in camp. I would love this like I saw when I was travelling over here. I would like this like I saw here. And I will say to you, what you're telling me is you can only imagine your town as a pale imitation of somewhere else. Most people can only give you back what they've already experienced. Now, if I was to set you a creative challenge, which is this, I want you to imagine that Nambour has changed to such an extent within 3 years that we have 5,000 mayors from Europe coming here to do a study tour of your town centre. I'm not kidding, that's possible, right? That is possible. What would have we done? And I'm going to tell you now that for most people that's an impossible task to know what we would do to be attracting that many people from overseas to do a study tour. Okay? So, in software terms, they say the client only knows 20% of what they want, and I say communities only know 20% of what they want if you go out and ask them, what do you want for your town centre? You okay up until now? All right. So what's the alternative to this? Well, it's the same as what's happening in the software industry. Now, I'm not going to go into this in depth tonight, but we call it agile planning. It flies under a number of different names around the world. If you go to my website there, I've got a free ebook that you can download that goes into a lot of detail about how agile planning works. Let me give you one of probably the most stark examples, and this will show you a completely different way that we can be building our town centres. Janet was the transport minister for New York, and she decided that she would like to close some of the traffic lanes in Times Square. And she said, if I wanted to change these traffic lanes, what's the traditional way that we would approach that? Well, first of all, we would go to the transport department and say, can we close these particular traffic lanes in Times Square? Now, what are the traffic engineers going to say back to me? No, they're going to say no. They're a bit more.
How are we going to get the cars through?
Yes. And to work that out, what are we going to need to do?
Research.
We're going to have to do some research. We're going to have to do a study. We're going to have to do origin and destination counts on number plates. We're going to have to feed all that information into computers and just see whether we can make the system work. Now, Janet said that's going to cost at least $1 million, and it's going to take 2 years. And she said, I already know what the computer's going to say. The computer's going to say, it can't be done. It doesn't work. So she said, I'll spend a fraction of that money on some container loads of movable furniture from China, and in a single weekend I'm going to go out and close those lanes and fill them up with furniture. And she said, within 2 weeks we'll know whether it works or it doesn't work. Now that's agile planning. The biggest trick I'm going to teach you is everything. It's back to the old days where you become a master craftsman. You try something, if it fails, you move on, you try something else. You do not spend millions of dollars in 2 years on an exercise where you already know what the end result is going to be. So here's one thing I'm going to, and I know not all of you are from council, but my key message to councils is stop consulting with your communities. And people say, well, what's the alternative? I'll give you an example. I don't know if I put a picture of this in. Let me check. No. Yes, I did. So this is Fremantle. Fremantle, I work on a whole range of projects in Fremantle. Now, one of the things that they had been debating for years in Fremantle was whether to put trees down the middle of Cappuccino Street. And I said, for God's sake, stop having committee meetings to discuss whether you should put the trees down the middle of the street. It's all hypothetical. It's a map. It's a drawing. Nobody really knows what any of it means. I said, put the trees in movable pots, put them up the middle of the street, and see what the community reaction to it is. Now, so this couple here with the pram are involved in an experimental process. This is true community engagement, which is based on real things happening in the real world, not on hypothetical bits of paper and hypothetical ideas. You with me? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, the thing that dismays me is that even the most advanced community development people in Australia are still locked into a master planning approach. In that even though they're state-of-the-art as the way that they work with the community, they're still asking the community to do pipe dreams and dream hypothetically rather than engaging them in the real world with real projects as opposed to just talking about it. Now let me tell you how all this started for me, and I'll tell you a bit of a story about how it evolved. I've told you about how I got involved in this field, but the big breakthrough point came a number of years ago when a council in Auckland asked me to do a town centre plan. By that stage I was doing your classical consulting work of doing town centre plans, etc. And I said to them, what's your budget? And they said $50,000. And I said, so is that my fee? And they said, yes. I said, and how much do you have for implementation? And they said,
Nothing.
nothing. And they said, we won't know how much we need for implementation until you've done your study. And I said, well, isn't that like employing an architect to design you a house? And when he says, what's your budget? You just go, don't know, we won't know until you've designed the house. And I said, this is a fraud because it's going to be at least 12 months before any money can go into the budget for it. And the chances are I'm going to come up with a design that you can't afford anyway. And so it will never go in the budget. It will always be too expensive and get put off. So I said, I'm not going to be a fraud on this community and engage in a community consultation process where I know pretty certain what the outcome of that's going to be, and that's going to be nothing. We'll have wasted the community's time. So I said, let's do an experiment. I said, let's say I take $5,000 as my fee, and I'll put the other $45,000 on the table, and I'll run a 2-day workshop with the community to find the most creative way to use that $45,000 to transform their town centre. I'll tell you the rest of the story in a moment. But here's why local government, I'm going to write a book about this one day. This is why local government is broken and why communities have largely unplugged. So we look at this place like the Nambour town centre and we go, we want to fix it up, what are we going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is put some money in the budget, $50,000 for a study. And we put nothing in here. And then we give this sack of money to a consultant who then runs a community consultation process where the community is not told how much we've got to spend. So what does the community do? They generate what I call the unaffordable wish list. All the things we wished for, let's put them, yeah, that's what I like. And then we run ridiculous things like we give everybody 10 red dots. Now go and vote for your favourite wish. We stick the red dots on our favourite wish. And the poor old council person, I know you're not going to do this, takes the butcher's paper home, rolls it up, sticks it under their desk. And what do we expect? We expect that somehow the consultation fairies come down at midnight and go, wow, that one's got 5 dots beside it, we better make that one happen, So we put all these unaffordable wishes in a report, and that report goes beside all the other reports full of unaffordable wishes. Now, there's this group of people in most town centres, I'm sure Nambour doesn't have them, they look at the unaffordable wishes and they start jumping up and down, we can't afford that, where's their ratepayers' money going? And so the councillors and senior managers get a bit nervous and they start picking the wishes out of the report one by one, and all these people who spent goddamn sacrificed their nights going to steering committee meetings, etc., to generate this fantastic report, see the whole thing disappear. So they check out. Why be involved in a process that, you know, when I first started with this business, back in about 89 or something, I was appointed to a steering committee for the state government to do the South East Queensland passenger transport study. I gave 2 years of my life, 1 day every week, full day every week for 2 years. We produced a stack of reports that, no kidding, was this high. It went up to the minister, and within 2 hours he'd said, this is a biased report, kicked the lot out and said, appointed another consultant to do another study. So, hey, I've never ever sat on another council or government steering committee in my life. I've made ironclad promise to myself, if I can't change the world through a party, I'm not participating. Now, unfortunately, the only people left in community consultation are the people addicted to endless talk and the one-eyed axe grinders who haven't sent up a pet project without pushing for the last 30 years. Yeah, you go to any of the meetings, they're there. Doesn't matter what the meeting's about, they're there, and they'll come up and they'll push. I don't know what it is here, or maybe it's the cane train or something like that. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. So after 5 years of nothing happening, can anybody guess what we do next?
Have another piece of it.
Yeah, we put more money in the budget for planning exercise. You know, I once did a year and a half's work in a town, full-time, year and a half, and then I got basically run out of town by one of the councillors. And after I left, I discovered that a consultant had done exactly the same study that I had done 5 years earlier, and nobody even told me. So we go round and round the circle. Broken system. So back to my story. So this was actually the workshop. The 45,000 isn't literally sitting in the middle of the table, but here's a breakthrough concept that came about in this very first one, was that we created what we call a resources bank. And into that resources bank went 45,000, but anything else that the community could donate. It's a key pillar of everything we do. We always create a resources bank. And the key challenge is, and I make a golden rule whenever I start working with a community, we're going to get as creative as we possibly can with the contents of that resources bank, and we are not going to think anything outside of that resources bank. We are limited to only doing what we can do, the most creative we can get. I don't care if it's $500. What is it that we can get creative with? I had a discussion with the young lady here earlier, and she was asking me questions about what about should we have more living in the town centre, etc., and put forward your classic solutions for a town centre. And the key question for me is, do you have control over that? Do you have the power to make that happen? And if you don't, stop advocating it, because it's outside of your control. You don't have control over that. What is it that you've got? She's a photographer and a psychologist, so my question is, how do you use those talents and gifts to change your town centre? That's taking your power back. That's looking at what it is you can actually do. This is the space they produced, and it took them 10 years to make this award-winning space. Because, well, I'll come back to just remember that fact, 10 years. All right.
Was that open?
Sorry? That was, no, this was in Auckland, what's it called? Bay something, down by the ocean. So, I'm going to cut the story a little bit short, but I was next approached by another town in New Zealand called Paihia. They've been doing a master plan of their town centre for a whole year. If you saw this master, I should have had this shot in of their master plan. $25 million master plan for a town of 1,700 people. So yeah, they talk about unaffordable wish lists. This is what people engage in. They said, can you help us? I said, no, I can't, unless you've got some money sitting on the table. So they went to their council, they got a $5,000 grant, and we followed this same process, a resources bank, run a 2-day workshop, and they created a little mini town square. And after they'd made their little town square for $5,000, one of the ladies who was part of the community group said, we came up with 4 other ideas in David's workshop. We really need to raise the money for that, to make those 4 projects happen. She set up an ops shop, and within 4 months had raised $47,000. And I said, well, I'm coming back for free, I'll run another workshop, we'll find the most creative way to spend that $47,000. Now, out of that came 8 new projects, and one of those projects they wanted to do was this toilet block. Now, this is where all the tourist buses pull up in here, beautiful Bay of Islands outside, and I didn't put it in, but some tourists have written on the wall, worst toilets I've seen thus far in New Zealand. There was raw sewage running along the back of the toilet block. But here's the proof about the 20%. The community said, what on earth could we do with this toilet block? No idea. The only thing they could imagine was bulldozing it and building a new one, but they didn't have $250,000, $300,000 to build a new toilet block. So they sent me down to have a look at it and said, David, if anybody can work out something, you can. So the moment I saw this toilet block, I got so excited I almost wet my pants with it. I have a fundamental belief that whatever you consider to be your town's greatest deficit is potentially your greatest asset. All it takes is imagination. Okay? So I said to them, I think we could renovate this in 9 days and for $15,000. Now this was a turning point in my career. It was probably the most exciting thing. This was agile planning at its best. There was no master plan for this toilet block other than a pencil drawing on a napkin, which was the core concept of how the space would work from a placemaking and safety perspective. Funnily enough, when I arrived, this line, and you'll see what happens with this in a moment, was already drawn on the wall, and they'd already started cutting it out. And I said, how did you decide where that was to go? And I said, well, that's where it's drawn on the napkin.
Yeah.
We literally made this up each day according to who turned up, what volunteers we had, what skills they had, etc. Now, just show how this agile always turns out better than what you could ever imagine and than anybody could ever master plan. Because one day somebody turned up with a boat. And they said, could you use a boat? Everybody said, well, we're renovating the toilet block. What should we do with the boat? Now, this toilet block, the town was so proud of, they created a postcard to sell to tourists. Now, first of all, have you ever seen this many tourists studying the toilet block? This was voted one of the top tourist attractions in the north of New Zealand. And there's the boat. That boat led to that entire rooftop garden. We hadn't thought of the rooftop garden, but when we looked at what we could do with the boat, I can tell you lots of stories about this. But this was, as I say, this was life-changing for me because it was the first time we actually built something using the agile model of not having a master plan but making it up as we went. Now, all of the town will tell you that nobody could have ever dreamed of that. No designer could have ever come up with that. It only came up by building it on the run with what skills we had on a day-to-day basis. Now, in here, that op shop, this was formerly a car park. Do you know any town that has been willing to take out 46 car parks and turn it into a park? This is how advanced this town has become. They spent $160,000 transforming this car park into a park, and all of that money came through from the op shop. They are now doing multi-million-dollar projects in their town centre. So these are just some of the shots of that park, and they won numerous awards like Community of the Year. Now, I was so excited by these developments. So Pie Hill was like my little experimental area where we were refining the way that we work with the community. So we started doing these instant makeovers of town centres all over Australia and New Zealand. And it worked like this. We'd get a resource like $5,000. We'd run a 2-day workshop. What's the most creative thing we could do with that $5,000? And we would form into project teams. And if I've got time, I'll explain how that works a little later. But this was really based on where's the energy in the town as opposed to what do I perceive as a master planner. And we would get people into these project teams, and then we'd say, you've got 12 weeks to get organised. Go and get the plants you need, the materials that you need, and then we'll come back and we'll do a 3-day, what in software they call a sprint, which is for us in those days, it was a 3-day makeover of a space for the town centre. Now, and then we'd leave town and we'd leave these teams to get organised. Can anybody guess what happened in the 12 weeks that I wasn't in town?
No.
Well, people say nothing, but a lot did happen. What is the community really, really, really good at? They just love doing? Talking and having committee meetings. And I would get a phone call. David, we're fighting over the colour of the pots. I spent $25,000 in 1 year going back to towns, sorting out these groups. There are many towns, particularly in New Zealand, that are still fighting between the teams, and nothing has happened in 6 years. The reason that first part took 10 years is because they were still falling back on the old master planning approach, which is we must know how everything is going to look, and we've got to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, have it all worked out before we start. You with me? So councils and communities are addicted to master planning, but so are communities. Communities want to know everything in advance before they'll commit. So, I've given it away. So after about 2 years of this, we did a review of all the towns we'd worked in. We went, man, we wasted $25,000 flying back to these towns. What's going wrong? And we worked out it's this addiction to master planning that's the problem. So we had a big brainstorm and we went, how are we going to fix this? So I've given it away, but what we did is we cut the 12 weeks out. And we went 2-day workshop, Saturday, Sunday, Monday you start building. Nobody's got any time to talk. Town, they say it's got no time to get mobilised. So it's the other thing, we had 12 weeks going to town, they say it's time to play havoc. We had projects closed down on that basis. So we created a 7-day makeover. Now there are really 2 key innovations with the 7-day makeover. The first is that we understood that there was no way that we could make over a town centre with council's blessing under existing ways of operating where you need building permits and you've got to put in applications and pay fees and all the rest of it. So we invented what we call the permissions approach as opposed to the regulatory approach. Now the way the permissions approach works is I send all the senior managers in the council well in advance of the 7-day makeover a simple A4 sheet which is the permission statement that we've established over many years. Now, to give you an example of what I mean by a permission statement. Permission statement is something like, you must leave a continuous walkway of 1.8 metres on the footpath. Now, under the old regulations, they'll say you can't put anything within X distance of the gutter, and you can't put things for a certain distance in front of the shops, etc. Well, all of that's done away with one simple statement: you must leave a continuous walkway of 1.8 or 2 metres, or 2.1, whatever it happens to be. Another permission statement is, if it's movable, it's permittable. Why do we need a permit if the council doesn't like it at the end of the day? We'll move it somewhere else, as long as it's movable, right? So that's a permission statement. So have a guess what we do?
Make everything movable.
We make everything movable, which allows us to make over a whole town centre in 7 days without having to go back to council. Now, I also do an audit of the town centre, and we have a meeting with the council staff where I say, what do you want to change in this? So there's some generalised stuff like those kind of statements. We deal with roads under the council's control, state highways, private property. There's little clauses for all that cover basically everything. But then we also deal with some specifics. So, for example, often I will say, can I take those bollards out? Can I take that bit of wall down? Can I convert that garden into a stage or whatever? Okay. Just so that when I work with the community, I can then say to them, we have permission to do X, but we can't do Y. You with me? So we just know in advance what we can and can't do. So that's a key innovation. Now, interestingly enough, and I think I might talk a bit about it later on, we work exactly the same way with retailers, and it's really, really important that we get councils to do away with all of the regulations about how retailers can engage with the footpath. And we get rid of all of the fees that are associated with that. Because my argument is, why are we charging retailers to bring the town centre to life? That is the most retarded strategy you could ever have. What we're doing is giving them a disincentive to add to the life of the street and helping send them broke at the same time. So, I'll see if I've got time to tell the story, but we do the same thing. We work with the council to produce a permission statement which says to the retailers, you can do whatever you like with the footpath. Here are 5 conditions you must apply, adhere to. All right. Oh, I'm going to show you a little video about an actual makeover.
I define placemaking as being a lot like homemaking. A homemaker takes a house and turns it into a home. A placemaker will take a public space and turn it into a place. Now, if you think of a house where the moment you go through the front door or the back door and you instantly feel at home, what is it that makes you feel at home in that space? You've got to, as a town, invest in trust, invest in generosity, and it will be remarkable what becomes a good town.
Oh, we're almost done anyway. So we took out 200 tonne of asphalt and concrete in the first 12 hours.
Wow.
Okay, so that particular one we did on a $25,000 makeover budget. There's a facilitation fee that's additional to that, but the $25,000 was in the resources bank. So you work out what that would cost council to build. Absolutely unbelievable. Okay, so the latest change in what we do is what happened in Tuncurry just recently down in New South Wales. When I was working with the council, Tuncurry is in the council that pioneered using a permission statement for the way retailers are involved with the footpath. That's where we developed the program with them originally. It's been highly successful. They have 3 full-time staff teaching retailers how to profit from better engagement with the footpath, all based on a permissions approach. And when I spoke to the council officers and we were talking about doing a 7-day makeover in Tuncurry, they said, look, we're happy to pay you a facilitation cost, but we think that the community should raise the makeover budget of $25,000. And I went, inwardly, I went, yeah, well, best of luck. But they raised $52,850. And this was an amazing project as they had no spaces that you could consider to be a town square. So we always look at where's the civic heart. That video that you just saw was all about creating a space that we would call the civic heart. Where do people go to feel connected to their town? And so in this case, the projects were spread out over 400 metres of street. As you can see, there are 20 major projects that were completed in a week. It was our most successful makeover ever because the retailers themselves had all invested in the project. Here's just a taste of the kind of things that we do. So I'm a great believer that everything in your town centre is telling stories, is sending messages to people. Can anybody guess what the message of the yellow fence is? Stay away.
Don't fall over.
Don't shop here. Now this is right at the entrance to their town. This is the first message that all tourists and visitors get, is don't shop in our town. Keep going.
Caution.
So this is one of the things in what is allowed. Can I take the yellow fence down? No. Anyway, it only took me 5 minutes, but they said yes. The residents couldn't wait to get it down, and this is what replaced it. There was nothing of the story of the town. One of the things I find is that every town is vanilla, it's generic, it's the same. You wouldn't know where you are, you wouldn't know what the setting of it is. These people are on a harbour, but there was absolutely not a single reference to the harbour. So if I just go back, you can see how this is all referencing the harbour, every bit of the design. We had 3 boats that were donated that were in the resources bank, so this is where we get significant value out of what goes into the resources bank. So as I said, this wasn't the first work that we've done with the council. This is where, this was in Taree. They had a main street that was dying and they called me in to see what I could do. And I said to them, how much are you collecting in fees for the cafes to be using the footpath? They said $9,700. I said, how much does it cost you to collect $9,700, which nobody had ever thought about? That somebody has to process the paperwork. If you need an enforcement officer out there with a tape measure, you've got to pay his wages. I said, you're running this bloody thing at a loss. And not only that, this is a huge disincentive for the retailers to actually help make your town centre alive. So I said, you've got to boil all of your regulations for the footpath down into a permission statement. So show them what the permission statement was like. They came back with a 10-page document. I said, no, that's still regulation. It's got to fit on a DL size brochure. So this is the DL brochure. This is one side of it. This is the other side. These are the 5 things that the retailer has to commit to if they want to be part of what's called private spaces. Out of that, we produced a little handbook which is now called Business Boosters. It has pictures of what you don't do, which you'll see lots of good examples. I could just come to Nambour and take lots of shots for this. All the things like flower places that have got no flowers outside of them. Got a whole alcove here all for the footpath that they can be using. And then show them shots of the way that you do it. And this is what I mean by retailers are either contributing or they're detracting from the life of your town centre. Your retailers have more impact on the vitality of your town centre than anything council can do, apart from council giving the retailers permission to make the footpath alive. Now in Cleveland, in Brisbane, we did an experiment which we called demo pods. And then with this, what we did was we said, you can't get retailers to come to a public meeting or to a training session or whatever. Trust me, I've been trying to do it for 21 years, it just doesn't work. So we decided that what we would do is actually demonstrate best practice in the real world with real shops. And so we said, we're going to select 2 retail businesses, we're going to spend $2,500 on your shop front to demonstrate good engagement. Okay? So this was one of the winners that won the $2,500 makeover. Now this business is called Colour My Pop. Does anybody know what this business does? Yeah. Well, you really got to think about it hard, haven't you? I mean, some people have suggested it's where you take your drugs and then you get them changed into a different colour, etc. Well, what you do is you go in and you can actually see vaguely through the glass here. You select a piece of pottery, you sit at the tables inside, you paint them, they fire it for you, you come back a few days later to cut them into pottery pieces. But you really wouldn't know from the name of the business. Now, the next problem with this business, where's the front door? Number one mistake they've made by almost every retailer. They assume everybody knows where their front door is. I can't work out where your front door is, what are you actually saying to me? Don't bother coming in, it's like the yellow fence. Okay? Now you might think it's here, but no, that's a fixed pane of glass. The entry is down here. They have to have an open sign in that front thing to let people know they're open. I say, if you need an open sign, then you fail to communicate. The same way I say, if you need a sign to tell, if you need words to tell people what you sell, you've failed to communicate. Somebody who can't read English doesn't know what you sell, you have failed to communicate the nature of your business. So, what did we do? First thing is we boarded the windows to make these into display windows, not confuse them as doorways. Second is I got them to extend the work table inside out through the glass to the outside, put the paints and everything outside, so you do not have to go into the shop to find out what they do. You can just look at that table and work out what they do. I got them to put, or we actually did it, we put these shelves on. When they're open, the pottery goes out on those shelves. And then the other thing that we did was this. Now, I believe that businesses can sell the nature of their business at the same time that they're adding life to the street. Okay, so you can see that this lets you know what the business is about, but it's also a gathering point, a place that people can go. As I said, we created the Business Boosters Toolkit, which is full of pictures, not words. So these are the bad examples you saw earlier, and these are the good examples of what to do in those circumstances. And at the back is an audit tool where we encourage retailers to work together in looking at their businesses, and this helps you say, well, my business is more like this one, and so you tick that box and you get a score of 1, and you go through and you get a score at the end which tells you how well you're doing or not doing. Summary lessons. Stop master planning. Actually, I should put there, stop having community consultation meetings. Stop talking. Create a resources bank and be absolutely laser focused on you only ever limit yourself to working with what you've got, not with what you wish you had. Number 3, create a permissions framework with your council. Now, a hint for you is the first thing I did when I was the placemaker of Wodonga is I set up what I call the red tape reduction group. And I got somebody from every department to be part of that red tape reduction group. And for example, I organised an event called Lounging on High where we had people bring their lounge chairs to town on a Friday night, and we'd have a big party in the main street. I won't explain all the reasons behind that. But I said that area had an alcohol ban, and I said I want people to be able to drink in the street on a Friday night. And of course, everybody goes, it can't be done. So I go to the red tape reduction group and I said, we're going to have people drinking in the street on a Friday night. I do not want 6-foot-high fences. I do not want security guards. Find a way for us to make it happen. And the interesting thing is, if a council's got a will to say yes, there is always a way that you can do anything you want to do. I'm glad you explained about that. Work with your businesses. Your businesses are your number 1 key asset to bringing your town centre to life. The council doesn't actually have to spend a single cent other than what I'd be investing in is how do you take your retailers along for the ride to say, we can boost the money in your till by helping you engage with the public realm in a more productive kind of way. It's really, really interesting with retailers. I couldn't understand retailers for years and years and years, and then I read a book called The E-Myth Revisited, which explains that almost all retailers are technicians that are really good at something like making cakes or giving advice or whatever it happens to be. They are not entrepreneurs and they're not managers. And they spend all of their life making a product. They do not have the foggiest idea how the configuration of their front door or their window display or what they put outside of their shop impacts the bottom line of how many goods that they sell. Let me just tell you an interesting story about this and show you the power of what I think the missing resource in the way that we work in a lot of our town centres. When I first went to Wodonga, I should tell you that every single town I work in, I hear one of about 3 stories as to why that town centre is not working. The most common one, there's not enough parking. The second most common one is lack of toilets. Now, the retailers in Wodonga are all going, we need a new toilet block, we need a new toilet block. Now, here's a little trick I'm going to teach you. So, whenever I have somebody say something like that to me, I go, okay, how much will the toilet block cost? Or do you get them cheap at 120 to 50,000 and it's closer to the mark? So my thought experiment is always, how do I solve this problem with half what it would cost to do it through the traditional method? But I like to push the boundaries. So in this case, I went, how would I solve it for $100,000? You want to know how I solved it for $100,000? No. Got the reason.
Yes,
I'd buy 10 red buckets. No, and not for what you think. I'd put $10,000 in each of the 10 red buckets. And I would go, any retailer willing to take it for customer only or staff only sign off of their toilet bill, we will spend $10,000 employing an artist to make your toilet the funkiest toilet in the world. Now, I want you to do the thought experiment. The visitor comes to Nambour. They walk into a shop and they go, like I did this afternoon, where's the closest toilet? And the retailer says to me, you can use mine. Oh, thank you. And I go out and I open the door, here's a bloody chandelier hanging from its ceiling. I've never seen anything like this. So after I've done my business, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to take a photograph. Okay? And later on I'm going to put it on Instagram or something. But I'm going to come out and I'm going to say to the person behind the counter, wow, that is the most amazing toilet I've ever seen. And this retailer is going to say to me, well, there's another 9 of them in town. Here's a map.
There's no pubs.
And I'm going to go and visit 9 retailers, and at every single one, I'm going to feel obligated to at least browse their merchandise. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Now, you're going to have people turn off the highway within 3 months to come and do the funky toilet tour. Now let's imagine, let's take this to a new level. Let's imagine that it's not just toilets, but every retailer in town, or a good percentage of them, thinks of one extreme act of generosity that they can give to visitors. Free top up of your water bottle, change area for babies, free Wi-Fi. You get in the picture? I believe extreme generosity on the part of retailers is the most underutilised resource any town has ever used to put itself on the map. I'm really serious about it, and I'll work with any town that wants to put that into operation, because I think we need a demonstration of a town that uses extreme generosity to drive the visitors to the town centre.
Because it's always such a surprise when that happens. You go, wow, someone just did that. Oh, beautiful thing.
All right, I'm almost done. I've got the last questions. Oh, well, I did have to show the book I've got here, but anyway. So we're at 7:30, what's it?
It was 7.
7. Am I already?
Yeah, that's all right.
It's been
I think I did a couple of my questions down.
All right, well, let's have a couple of minutes for questions, and yes.
What do you do with the row of empty shops?
With a row of empty shops?
Yeah, when you're talking about retailers, and it's all very well, but when you've got more empty shops and retailers in the street, what do you say?
Okay, so the first thing is you must stop seeing those as the deficit and start saying, if these were our greatest asset, how do we use them? Now, there's a mob called Renew Newcastle, who completely and utterly changed the centre of Newcastle. They had something like 80% vacancy rates in Newcastle. But because, and this is where every solution has to be tailored to the town. It depends on a whole range of circumstances. But there are about 3 owners that own the majority of the shops in Newcastle. So they did deals with them where they had incubator arts businesses would go into these shops on the basis that if they were leased, they would leave within 2 weeks notice. And then what started to happen was the businesses that actually became viable would then go to the owner and go, can I do a deal with you? I want to rent permanently. I don't want to be moved out in 2 weeks. So it became an incubator for arts-based businesses like photographers, etc. So there's lots of different strategies for that. We've got a photographer. They could become the huge billboard for fantastic photographs in the town. It's up to you. It's a mindset where you go, whatever you consider to be the deficit, how do I turn that around to be my greatest asset? And I can't give you the instant answer of how it would work and give you examples, but that's the way I think. Other questions?
I'd like to implement the toilet thing right now because today my husband took my 90-year-old mother-in-law to NAB to change over some bank accounts, and she needed to go to the toilet and she's on a wheelie walker. So John said, can we use your toilet? And they said, no. Where's the nearest toilet? It is across through the centre, in the disability toilet, vomit everywhere, filthy. So John had to clean the toilet, so his 90-year-old mother could go to the toilet.
Yeah, I'm not joking about. To me, the council was to invest what they currently invest in building toilet blocks and keeping those toilet blocks clean in a generosity program. You would get 100 times more value out of it than what you currently do. Other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What you're talking about in a lot of ways is cultural change. What is your best suggestion for cultural change, and what is your biggest barrier that you find for cultural change? Because none of that's going to happen without a culture that says it can.
Great question. Great question. And I failed to say that our biggest emphasis now is that first of all, how do I change your town story? Is what the 7-day makeover is all about. I'll just give you a big example of that. We always put loose furniture in a makeover.
Yeah.
We always get the same response. You don't know our town, it's going to get stolen. And I always go, do it for 2 months and tell me what happens, right? And when I come back in 2 months and nothing's gone missing, I've changed the town story about its identity. So the psychology of this is absolutely key, so I'm glad you asked. But the other thing we have a big emphasis on is how do we empower the town to keep going with these micro makeovers that then add up, like in the case of Pai here, totally transform an entire town centre and put itself on the map. How do we get that momentum? So when we do a 7-day makeover, we leave behind all of the systems that we've developed over 30 years with the community. We have given them a couple of suitcases that has all the safety vests, the project whiteboards, all of the priority intellectual property. We leave it with them. Plus we give them a $4,000 grant to do follow-up makeovers, in which we mentor them in that process. So Penguin in Tasmania was our first really big success at that strategy. We also hand over the Facebook page. So we establish a 7-day makeover Facebook page for each town, and then we hand that over to the community. In the case of Penguin, and we also, any money that, so they had a $25,000 budget. From memory, I think they had 3,000 or something left over out of that budget that they hadn't spent. So with our 4,000 that we gave, they had 7,000. So then they apply to us to say we want to put fairy lights in the tree, or we want to build another deck or whatever. And then we ask them questions about that, and we go, fine, here's your money. So with that leftover money, they did 5 more projects spread out over a period of time. They went from having a core team of about 5 people to a core team of 12 people that had their own private messaging thing. That group is now incorporated as a not-for-profit. They're doing their own fundraising, and every second weekend they're out doing projects in the town centre. So to me, that's the success story. And then one lady's taken a Facebook page and is absolutely blitzing it with attracting people to the town centre through that Facebook page. So that's the cultural change. Cultural change has to be with council in using the permissions approach, and with the community where they're willing to take that kind of action.
And that structure that you're talking about is like saying there will be a future beyond this. Is that what you're saying? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
that you create the event and then you go, this isn't like everything else. There's something, this is the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's going to be amazing.
So the 7-day makeover is a trial for council and the community for us to say, here is a different way of working with each other. If you like it, keep doing it. And I was saying to somebody earlier, experience is the only way we change culture or change people's system. Reports, information, that does not shift the culture of a town or an organisation. Only an experience of some kind will shift it, and that's what we aim is. We're making these bigger than Ben Hur now. We have a team of 6 people that we take in because we want people to just have this mind-blowing experience of, holy crap, look what we did in 7 days, and then, let's keep going. Yep.
I just had a question you started to touch on there about that kind of impact of council on the journey. Obviously, you're establishing this process, this group of people who kind of heard about your approach. It's not dissimilar to some other people in this space. Reports and mechanisms are kind of how council make decisions there. What's your advice for getting that council buy-in for that permissions type of approach, being able to propose something at the right level to be able to get that buy-in? Because a lot of this stuff you have to say no to council. What's your advice in terms of trying to find that push point with council and electing councils to both sides of the fence?
Another good question. So we highly recommend that we start with a half-day workshop with the senior managers, councillors of the council, and business leaders and community leaders in that half-day workshop. Because unless we can sell the overall vision, nobody's going to buy into this. Okay? And then we say that's a kind of a taster of what can be accomplished. And in that if we were doing it here in Nambour, for example, part of that half-day workshop would be a walk around your town centre where I would point out the kinds of things that we may do in a 7-day makeover. What's not working, what could work, what would do. Now, what I generally find, if I can get a group of councillors and senior management and business leaders on a walk like that, they come back and they go, where do we sign? Right, because they can kind of start to see that what I specialise in is how do I have a huge impact doing small stuff, as opposed to most consultants will come in and go, you need to spend $10 million and pull this down and change the street configuration, etc. So we're all about what's the small. I always say the house that you give me is the house I will turn into a home. I do not pull the house down and start again. Right? So whatever the structure of your town is, and that's what gets the staff excited, because they can see that there's possibilities for making big impacts with very small initiatives. Okay, one last, or 2 last questions.
The community buy-in, the lady that's been doing this for my children, that sort of community spirit, how does that, so rather than handing it over back to council to maintain it, to endeavour to keep the community, that ownership rolling, that would be important?
Absolutely. That's what the $4,000 grant and us holding their hand for the first, how many other projects they can do with that money. Absolutely. And we see some absolutely unbelievable transformations during that week. We never know at the start of the week who the new community leaders are going to be that are going to emerge out of the process. So the lady that drives the Facebook page in Penguin and is the key person driving the whole thing in Penguin was a lady that turned up. Her idea for Penguin was that some years ago that somebody had painted little yellow penguin footprints on the footpath. And she said, I want to repaint the footprints. And so I sat down with her and I said, you know that they'll probably wear off and look a bit tacky after 6 months. And she went, oh. I said, plus you can only paint them where there's asphalt and concrete. You can't paint them where there's grass. Oh. She said, what do you suggest? I said, well, you've got a whole lot of fantastic destinations in your town that no tourist would ever know existed. They pull up in your town centre, they go for a walk along the beach, they think that's the sum total. You've got all these hidden assets in your town. Why don't we create a penguin adventure trail that connects all of the key points in town? So to cut a long story short, she got a whole group of people together and they designed this penguin adventure trail which people are now travelling from other towns to come and do the penguin adventure trail. That got her so fired up she has become the key person in town. So from painting some yellow footprints into being a town leader, absolutely unbelievable transformation. And that's what gets us every single time. We leave every mate go to come just go, wow, we are the luckiest people in the world to be working and seeing this kind of transformation. One last question.
I was just wondering if you get, when people see the red up about what's happening, do you get a lot of things provided, materials provided from organisations and that?
Absolutely.
Volunteers are there, but
Yeah.
materials, do they donate materials and stuff?
Well, we get all sorts of things. So we have 3 boats in that. One of the things we always do is we go to the council depot and we rummage around and we find old bridges, we find all sorts of things, and we go, are we allowed to have that? And they go, well, it's been here for 30 years, yeah. Take a photograph of it. Our resources bank sometimes will fill up a whole wall. There's just photographs of either stuff at the council depot or things that are people willing to donate. It doesn't mean that we use everything, but there are certain things that people will, because my challenge is, look at that, what's the most creative thing you could do with something off of that wall?
I was thinking more along the lines of a concrete contractor or something.
Yes, we get all that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. David has given us his time tonight and his expertise for free. So on behalf of the old ambulance station, and I suspect this is not the last time we'll see you in this town. Just quietly. On behalf of the old ambulance station, on behalf of everybody here tonight, thank you, David.